Welcome back for day 2 of the Eleanor with Ruffles sew-along. I hope you're enjoying putting your Eleanor together. The next thing I want you to do, and I usually on the first day, I tell you all your supplies you need in just the first segment, and I forgot to tell you that you need just a 1-inch strip of baby interfacing, lightweight fusible interfacing for the back opening of the Eleanor. So you need your strip to come down just a little bit past where your dot is. So that means you may need to put your dot back on there again. Just put it back in the same place and be sure that if you hold up your the sides of your back opening, the dots should line up perfectly. That's really important when we start stitching that placket in a little bit. So you will need to fuse 2 1-inch strips of interfacing. Sorry, I didn't say that at the beginning of the class. Hopefully you've got that nearby. I was just noticing this dress and this fabric would be so cute with a monogram in the middle, either white or maybe even bright red. And this would be the perfect time to do it if you were going to do something like that. Then the next thing you need to do is go ahead and get your lining and with right sides together, do the stitch the shoulder seams and press those open, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Now for the next step, I have my lining right side up, my dress right side down, so right sides together. And what we're going to do next, if you want to follow along in the Eleanor instructions, this is step 29. And you have your dot match there. And what the instructions tell you to do is start stitching at that dot, back stitch, go a 1/2 inch, pivot, and then go up the side of the dress back 1/4 inch from the edge. So I like to just go ahead and mark what I'm going to do down there, because otherwise I'm just going to be guessing about what a 1/2 inch is. And so I just did that to both sides. So what you're going to do is you're going to stitch up, you're going to stitch around the neck, pivoting at the corners, back down, and do the same thing here where you stitch over a 1/2 inch and then go to the dot and back stitch. Let's go ahead and do that, and then we will move on to the next step. So I've stitched and I've trimmed, clipped corners, clipped in at the neckline, and now we are ready for step 30, which is trimming away a 1/2 inch from the remaining back seam. So I started by putting some pins further in than the 1/2 inch just to keep my fabrics from shifting. And now I have cut up a 1/2 inch until I get right there. So it should look like that. You should have a clip in diagonally, and then you can also clip at that corner too. But before we can go on to 31, we have to finish our armholes, because this is a sleeveless dress, which, by the way, if you would prefer to do something like this but use one of the sleeves in Eleanor, you would just continue with the instructions and finish it that way. We just have to do it a little different because we need to finish our armholes. So what you need to do, because you don't want to stitch this any of your ruffle down, right at the shoulder seam, take your ruffle and kind of fold it, kind of roll it, and then place the shoulder seam of the lining onto the shoulder seam of the dress. Then once you've done that at the shoulder seam, you can go along and just flip the rest of the ruffle to the inside and out of the way. So you're going to sew this armhole curve. You'll go ahead and do the other side too. Go ahead and trim and clip that seam because it's a curved seam. And then we'll be back to turn our dress right side out. Now I've stitched my armhole, trimmed it, and clipped it, and now we're going to take all of this and pull it through the shoulder seam. And it really comes through pretty easily. I was thinking as I was stitching this of other ways you could finish this armhole, and you could just continue with the Eleanor instructions, which it would include doing the side seams, stitching the side seams, and then finish that raw edges of the armhole with a bias band. That might be kind of cute. I also thought it would be cute to pipe the armhole seams and the neck seam with maybe a matching piping to your lining. So I hope y'all will try some things like that. I know watching the iron is probably about as much fun as watching paint dry. But I thought maybe we could go ahead and move on to the next step, which is step 31. For the corners at the neckline, you need to use a point turner. And then come down to the bottom here where your placket point is. And get that pushed out, and I'll worry about hemming or pressing the rest of this in just a second. There. Okay, so step 31 is where we finish the center back seam. And the way we do that is, take my iron out of the way. Okay, so I'm just going to move this out of the way for now. So here's your back. Now what we want to do is we want to put the linings together, right sides together, and the dress fabric together, right sides together. And carefully pin so that those two extensions for the placket meet, which is also where your dot is. So I've got those even together, and so I'm going to pin right there. Now, what you need to do is, starting at the dot, so I didn't have a dot on this side, so let me put one there so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So starting at that dot, I'm going to stitch all the way down the remaining seam of the lining. And then this is two separate steps, so don't try to just stitch and go all the way across on the dress fabric too. So after you've done that, I'll probably have to remove this pin that I have holding those placket extension out of the way. And then I will come back, and then you can't really see my dot, but it's right there. Then I'll come back and stitch the remaining part of the back of the dress seam. So I'm going to do that and do a little more pressing, and then we will be back. Okay, I hope your placket went well. When I back stitched at the dot, I back stitched one too many stitches, so I had a little pucker, so I had to clip that. But it's looking pretty good now. What you'll need to do is, see how that flips back, and the other side under here, you will need to straight stitch right across here to secure that, because that is going to get some pulling on it when it's unbuttoned and your sweet girl is putting it on or quickly taking it off. So be sure and do that top stitch, or that straight stitch right there, just right above the bottom of the placket. And now we are ready for side seams. Oh, I was going to tell you, I haven't been mentioning finishing seams because it's completely lined, but as you can see, I love this denim, and it's so soft and just flows very pretty, but it does tend to fray more than some wovens. So I've just been finishing my seams because of that, and since I was finishing the seams on this, I went ahead and finished the seams on the lining too, but that's totally up to you. The next step is the side seams, and that is one long seam. So start by putting a pin where the lining and fabric meet at the armhole, bottom of the armhole. Put a pin there. You don't want that to shift. And then you will have one long seam to stitch. Actually, you'll have two, one on each side. So you'll start there, go all the way over here, and then I'll see you back in a few minutes. Well, side seams are done. Hem is in. I went ahead, sometimes when it's an A-line dress like this, for the lining, I go ahead and cut it off about 1.25 inches and then just turn it up twice for a small hem. It's just a little quicker for me. So, all done except for buttons. I forgot to get buttons at the shop. Boy, I sure do miss our Children's Corner family, and I miss our sewing buddies. I bet you do too. We really appreciate you watching these sew-alongs with us. I think it's a great way to keep connected. See you next time.